Action. Hello. Welcome to QABC. We are a community that's for people who want to get into testing. So just to give them ideas on, like what testing's all about. This is a really exciting event for us because we're going to be talking about accessibility, and not many companies actually perform accessibility very well. So I'll just go through as we go along. This doesn't work. Have I got it? Oh, there we go. We've got a code conduct. It's free space, safe space, free event. Everyone's welcome to join. Please be respectful to it, everyone. If anything does happen, give me a shout. Any breaking the rules, you won't be allowed to come back. Simple as. And basically, don't be a dick. That's it. Right, so what we're trying to do, we're trying to grow out this community a little bit more. We've been running for 3 years, but we want to get more people to come along to participate. We want more guest speakers. So if you can, take some pictures and send them over to us so that we can post them on our websites. If you've got social media, anything like Twitter, tag us in that. We're on Twitter as well, tag us in that. And if you're currently working in an IT company, pass our details over to your IT team to see whether we can get some ideas going with them if they want to do a talk for us as well. That's it, really. Who are we? That's me. I am the test lead here at Code. So this is our event space. We have the luxury of using this whenever we want any type of events. It's free for us, so that's great. I've been in testing for over 13 years. I've done normal testing, I do test management, and I know a little bit about development life cycles and test life cycles as well. I do a little bit of agile coaching as well. If you come to some of these events, I don't know whether many people have been before. I think you've been before, to a couple? Yeah, you have been before. I tend to run agile games as well. So some things that, will give you a little bit of information, and it's a little bit fun as well. And I do talk fast. I'm from Liverpool, I talk fast. If I talk too fast, let me know and I'll rein it in a little bit. Chris, who's on the door, I should have told him to come back up, really, he's on the door, seeing whether anyone's coming along. He's a test analyst over at Enikő. He's actually the original founder of the QABC. And I joined and helping him out and all that type of stuff. He's got a baby due next month. He wanted me to tell people that because he's so proud of telling everyone. So I just thought I'd mention that. He's got a baby on the way. And he's also a Ministry of Test team member. So he works with them on helping them set up events and, talk with, people. This is who we're waiting for Ashley. Unfortunately, she's stuck in traffic. So she sponsored this event, her company Searchability, and she's an expert in test recruitment as well. A little bit more on that later, but I'll let Ashley go through her slides later on. This is Andy. He's over there. That's a good photo. I like that photo. So he's a principal developer here at Code. We've worked together for probably since I started my career in testing. And he's a principal developer here. He loves cats. He loves little cats. What he does, he records and uploads all our events. So as you can see, he's going around clapping his hands, trying to get the sound right. We're all mic'd up with different things as well. Not only that is that he's a great knowledge of the development process and how test fits in with that. See him bigging you up? You don't usually get that. That's about it, really. Today we've got guest speakers of Enikő and James. They both work here at Code. Enikő works on my team. You're a tester, which is great. And Jim is our front-end specialist. And you guys are, accessibility champions here at Code. So, and they'll tell you all about that as we go along. This was what Ashley was going to do. But I'm just going to gloss through this and she can do it when she turns up. So, yeah, it's sponsored by Searchability. There we go. When she comes along, she can go through all that. And that's about it from me.
Let's take a break to mic these two up because everything's been thrown out.
So yeah, two seconds, and then we'll continue. Ready?
Right. Welcome everyone. We will get started on the main event, which is we are going to talk about accessibility testing, as you all know. Can you click for me, please? It's just a brief introduction. That's me. No, I included the IKEA monkey because I used to have that as my profile picture, and I don't really like photos of myself. So yeah, I started working at Code about a year ago, and I didn't really know much about accessibility beforehand. I did a testing course, that's how I became a QA, but even then, accessibility was more about just, you know, a subsection of usability testing, and that's it, was glossed over, wasn't really mentioned much. So I'm fairly new, and why is that important? Because I'm coming at this from a point of view of a novice. I don't claim to be an expert on accessibility. I just want to show you how you can just take all those tiny baby steps, the first steps towards testing for accessibility. And yeah, I became part of the Accessibility Champions team, and as you can see, I've got a weird name because I'm Hungarian originally, so you can just call me Enikő, because that's just simpler for everybody. But it's actually pronounced Enikő. And that's about it.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, and I'm James, or Jim, and yeah, I'm not a tester. I'm a front-end designer, technical engineer, but front-end designer is just something fancy that I call myself. Yeah, I'm passionate about and interested in accessibility, and I'm part of the Accessibility Champions and advocate for it at Code as well. So by Accessibility Champions, as Enikő kind of alluded to, we wouldn't class ourselves as accessibility experts, but we're a group of people with different experiences that are passionate about pushing accessibility forward within Code and just in the general kind of wider development community as well. Yeah, public speaking isn't something that comes naturally to me, so I am quite nervous about this. So yeah, if I lose my way or have to check my notes, then yeah, please just bear with me, I'll get there. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about, it's kind of going to be in 3 stages. So we're going to talk a little bit about why accessibility is important, then Enikő's going to talk a little bit about her experience of getting into accessibility testing, some of the things you can be checking, and then we're going to have a quick break, and then I'm going to do some live demos of actually testing some accessibility, a little bit of automated tools, so Wave and browser extensions, some keyboard testing, and then also a little bit of screen reader that could be chaos, but we'll see how it goes. So yeah, we just kind of wanted to start off. We will be using Ali or A1Y. You might hear it pronounced in different ways, but just wanted to kind of clarify what that was. So it's something called a numeronym, and it's 11 letters in between the A and the Y. Another example you might see is I18N, which is internationalization. And I wasn't looking forward to saying those 2 words, so I'm glad they're out of the way. But yeah, if you do see that, it would just mean accessibility. So yeah, let's start off on, so why do we need to care about accessibility? Why is it important? I think before we can really start like caring about fixing it and getting people to understand why we need to fix it and spend extra time on it, we need to think about why are we making things accessible? So yeah, when it comes down to it, we as developers and building products, we can make everyday tasks that we take for granted every day impossible, and not just in the web as well, but outside of the web. And accessibility, it's a right, not a privilege. You know, everyone has a right to participate in digital society and society in general. So if we think about something outside of the web to start with, road crossings. So I think they're a great example where if there's a lack of audio and tactile indicators, it can restrict people's independence. So, you know, everyone has a right. Imagine not being able to go and visit your family or go to the shops because you can't get across the road because there's no accessible road crossings. Like, yeah, it's making a really sort of simple task impossible for somebody. And yeah, so like, for example, with the road crossing, so you'll have heard the kind of audio signals you get when you can cross the road. That's important to someone who might be blind or low vision. If you're deaf blind, then there's some little like tactile cones underneath which actually spin around when you can cross the road. And so it's little design features like this that, you know, can really open up the possibilities independence for someone. But also with accessibility, it can help other areas as well. So if we think about that from digital, we think about SEO, readability, but for something like road crossings, like imagine a wheelchair user or someone on the bike or someone, mother with a pushchair, you know, the tactile pavements with the ramps down, they can help those users as well. So thinking about it from a web, perspective, I think forms are a really good example. because there's something that we use a lot of, like every site's probably got a form on it somewhere. It allows people to make important contributions, so it might be like filling in forums or applying for certain benefits. So it's really key that we make our forms accessible. And I suppose another example of how you could make an everyday task impossible is online banking. It's full of forms. If your form's not accessible and somebody can't use online banking, imagine they didn't really have anyone to turn to. They had to give a stranger their bank details so they could log in, and it's just not a very nice experience. So here, these are some examples on the .gov site, which we'll show a little bit later as well. I generally find for forms, they're a great resource to go to because they just do it really well. So sort of things we're talking about are visual labels, nice focus states. But again, if we think about, it's not just for screen readers and keyboard users, like people on their phones, people with using a mouse, they can tap the labels as well, so it's a bigger tap area for them. And again, we'll look at some .gov examples later. So often when we're tackling accessibility, it could be either misunderstood, or people might just not care about it or not know why we should be caring about it. So I think there's a couple of arguments that we can make to help with that. And the first one is the ethical argument. And I think generally all of us here and a lot of people working in the profession will know it's just the right thing to do. As we've just spoken about, we can really severely limit people's abilities by blocking them and excluding them with the code that we write and the products that we build. Inaccessibility is discrimination, whether it's intentional or not. So whether it's just you don't know that there's an issue there, or no one excludes on purpose. But it's discrimination. The right to participate in digital society. So everyone's got the right to participate. The right to complete tasks independently and securely. Again, the online banking form I think is a really good example to give someone who might not know or understand why it's important. Allowing people to make valuable contributions. This could be like online forums, people getting in touch with each other, which kind of leads on to the last one as well. So by making something inaccessible and excluding users, you could actually socially isolate someone if they couldn't use the forum to get in touch with their friends. And it could also cause physically and mental health issues as well. So if you think about sort of animations on the web, people with vestibular issues that might be triggered by content sliding across, and if you've not kind of thought about that in terms of respecting users' preferences, that could cause someone of a real physical issue. However, for some people, the ethical argument might not just hit home, or they might still not understand it, or it might be that just, people need numbers to make that case. So, at least 1 billion people, that's 15% of the world's population, have a recognised disability. But then if we look at this next stat, 96.8% of home pages still had Wikag 2 failures. That was in the Web AIM 1 million survey that was updated last year. Approximately 300 million people in the world are visually impaired, and over 50 million are totally blind. The disposable income, so here we're kind of talking about, and this might make sense to some stakeholders, or this what might hit home with some stakeholders. So disposable income for people with disabilities, 645 billion, 17.1 billion lost revenue a year due to shoppers on e-commerce sites facing accessibility issues. Obviously the law as well is something that people will lean on when they're talking about accessibility, so lawsuits are increasing year on year as well. Ken's going to send these slides around afterwards, and there is references where I've got these figures from as well, if you need to use those. So I'm going to briefly talk about the Wikag guidelines. I'm not going to go into too much detail on them because, frankly, I think they're intimidating, quite hard to read, and it might just scare people off. So I'm kind of going to go over the 4 principles that you might hear about when you hear about the Wikag guidelines. So they're kind of separated into 4 main areas. That's perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And you'll often see this acronym POUR used. I've also linked at the bottom as well here, though, to the actual guidelines. So if you do want to go and see all the actual guidelines, then yeah, just follow that link. But yeah, what we're kind of talking about here is, so all the success criteria for the guidelines are separated into these 4 principles. So perceivable, so everyone must be able to understand your content in a way that they can understand. So this might be sight, hearing, touch, alternative formats, transformability. So an example of this would be captions and transcripts for videos. Operable, so everyone must be able to use their input requirements to access your content. So later on when we do some keyboard testing, that's an example of that, being able to navigate a site via keyboard alone. So anything that a mouse user can do, a keyboard user should be able to do that as well. Understandable, so everyone must be able to understand your content, so meaning, language, consistent layouts and functionality. So, you know, people with neurodivergent conditions don't want the layout shifting all the time, like help in different places, the navigation changing, how it works. And another example of this would be not using jargon and acronyms where possible, so sort of a lower reading age is better. Robust, so this is maximising compatibility with current and future technologies. So this is something like making sure that you're using semantic and valid HTML that's not going to break assistive technology currently or in the future as well. So a couple of types of accessibility that I think kind of get forgotten about. I do find a lot of the time that when people talk about accessibility, they're thinking like wheelchair access or blind, short-sighted screen reader users. But, you know, disability isn't binary and it doesn't have to be permanent as well. There are temporary impairments as well that we need to be thinking about. So I suppose if we go back to, can we go back to? Yes. If we go back to the captions and transcripts for videos, so, you know, it might be that someone someone deaf needs this, and that might be a permanent disability. However, it might also be that someone has a newborn baby and they're using their phone. No, not that example, sorry, that's a different one. It might be that someone's on a train, doesn't have their headphones with them, and they need to consume some video content, so captions would help them as well, but that's a temporary impairment. The example with the parent holding a newborn baby would be sort of like, you know, you talk about your tap targets, like icon buttons and things, so, you know, the train might be moving around, or they might, just be using one hand, someone might have broken their arm. So these are temporary impairments, but things that we still need to care about when we're talking about accessibility. Similarly, aging population. So the population age 65 and over is growing faster than other age groups. Again, there's a link in the notes on the reference for that. But again, so as you get older, your eyesight can get worse, your mobility can get worse. So it's another type of accessibility that we need to care about, but sometimes doesn't get talked about. You just talk about the guidelines. I saw a really great example on a train where a woman was reading a site and she zoomed right in, it looked like 300, 400%. And yeah, everything just like worked kind of nicely. So obviously whoever's built that site, they've built it with responsive design in mind. They've checked their reflow. And then, yeah, and obviously she managed to do the journey that she did. And then she then got a magazine out, but was really struggling to read. She had it right up, she had to get her glasses out. And I just think it's a great example of how the things that with the products that we build on the web can, you know, by just making sure that we're checking things like magnification and think about, like, you know, different types of accessibility like this, we can really help people not have to, you know, reach for the glasses. If she's gotten her glasses, she might not have been able to like read the newspaper, but, you know, online we can check this.
Well, that's me. Thank you, Jim. So I will be talking about some of the very, very basics and easy stuff that you can do when you start learning about accessibility testing. I wanted to open with a little question. Is there anybody here who had any experience with accessibility testing so far?
Very little.
Very little. I mean, very little is something, and you have to start somewhere, so that's good. Do you mind telling us just in one sentence, any of you, about your experience, just a little bit?
So I worked with a pension provider, and we did local government pensions, and everything, because it's kind of a public service, it has to be accessible to people. So we kind of were told that with like a month's notice that we had to make it accessible, and then we basically went about trying to make it accessible for a month. That was it.
And did you have much knowledge before you? Okay, so you had to learn on the go. That's a really, really good example, actually, because that's how I started on the go. I was lucky enough though that one of the devs on my team was really passionate about accessibility. So by buddying up with her and testing the accessibility tickets that she was putting through and she was building, I started learning more about screen readers, color contrast, alt text, all that kind of thing. And it was just a lot easier to do it step by step because it wasn't overwhelming. And I wasn't reading the web content accessibility guidelines and, you know, getting too scared to do anything, because as soon as you start scratching at the surface of accessibility, then you realize that it's an enormous subject and it can be quite daunting. So my number one advice is find someone who is just as passionate about it as you are and try to learn together, try to build on it together. And if you're not working as a QA yet, then you can find these buddies in different forums on the internet, or you can watch tutorials on YouTube. There's just plenty of different sources, and we are going to provide you with some in this presentation as well when we send it round. So yeah. So what did we do, me and my buddy, to improve our processes when it comes to accessibility? The first thing that you might not be involved in, but here at Code we are involved in it, is writing requirements. So as QAs here at Code, we do write the tickets and all the acceptance criteria for whatever gets built. And by including different accessibility criteria from the get-go, you are really being cost efficient, because you don't have to then, as like an afterthought, go in and then test again and build again and improve your product if you just start from when you're building it. And then the next step doesn't really involve the QAs, but you have to make sure that your developers are following those guidelines, and not just guidelines, but common sense when it comes to building accessible products. Then the third one is where we actually come in, where we definitely come in. That's for testing for accessibility issues. I will show you some tools and techniques later on, so I'm not going to really go into detail with this one. And then you might be working on something that has already been built. So when you get downtime or when you're doing some maintenance testing, it's good to then just go through some tools and some guidelines when it comes to accessibility, because a lot of old code might have been built in a time where people didn't care about accessibility. Let's be honest, this is sort of new, that it's coming into the spotlight now. And that's just the right thing to do, to then go and review everything that we already have in place. And then obviously report the existing issues. So you might want to look up like an accessibility bug ticket. What does that look like? We probably should include the steps to recreate and then maybe the guideline that it breaks. Just that people know why it needs fixing and from whose perspective it's not accessible. And then the last one is, as I alluded to previously, just remember that this is a massive subject, so don't be too scared to get started because it's such a massive subject. Get started, do your best, and then with time, obviously, you will learn and have more experience, and then you might become an expert. And like I mentioned in the first step, the really important thing is to shift left. What does that mean? So we need to include testing as soon as possible in the life cycle, and that also applies to accessibility testing. So if you look at the requirements and you spot something that doesn't sit right with you because you think it's breaking some accessibility rules, point it out, because good design should be accessible to everybody. If you look at disabilities from a different perspective, it basically is just bad design. Because, yeah, good design enables, whereas bad design disables, irrespective of the user's abilities. So yeah, on to the stuff that you might do, and these are really easy, so hopefully these will be things that you can already start doing just to practice. I will go through all these one by one, so it's just a little bit of a content slide. The first one is about zooming and resizing text. So the success criteria is that you should be able to magnify your text or your content up to 200% so that people with low vision can actually read it or can actually see it without having to scroll or scroll sideways or just do anything weird that is just not comfortable for them. And how do you check that? By just using the zoom tool in your browser. Really bad example of this. This is the creating a new account on Yahoo. And as you can see, someone with low vision might want to just zoom in on their phones, and it's almost impossible for them to actually fill out the form, which probably is the most important form that Yahoo has because they want new users, don't they? So yeah, this is just a great or bad example of how this could go wrong. Then the next bit is about colour contrast. Again, really simple. You just have to make sure that the background and the content on it have enough contrast so you can actually read what's there. It's got a minimum contrast ratio of 4.5 by 1, but I don't even know what that means. There are tools for that. So what you can do is there are some really nice plugins for Chrome or any other browser, or even Wave that we will talk about later, that has a built-in colour contrast checker that will just notify you if they think that your text isn't accessible. So this colour contrast checker was built by one of my colleagues actually, called Alex Clapperton. This is a Chrome plugin. And what I was doing is I went on the Vinted site, and I think you might be able to tell already what my problem here was. Can anybody point out what is wrong here?
The menu items are really hard to read.
Exactly,
the
yes.
text on the item.
Yes, that exactly is my point here. So I just took this little eyedropper tool to see whether the text in the nav is accessible, and obviously using the eyedropper tool to check not just the text but the background. And compared to each other, they were failing 3 times actually. So when you look at this, large means large text. So if the text was quite big, then it would pass the most, like the minimum of contrast. But then the AAA is like the advanced criteria, which it fails even when it's large. And when you look at normal, which that is probably classed as a normal size text, it fails both of those. So, and that is actually on their live site right now. And then the next one, which is really close to my heart. So, as I mentioned, I'm Hungarian and my hearing isn't great. So when I watch a video, I really, really appreciate if there's some sort of text alternative. I pretty much always turn subtitles or closed caps on for everything. And also, as Jim mentioned, if you're just in a noisy environment, then you might not want to disturb everyone around you, so you just want to watch something and you turn your closed captions on. But alt text also refers to images. So you want to have a description of what you can see in the image. And we will be talking about that in a bit more detail in a bit, or later on in the demos. Just a really good example here as well. So alt text might be great for just an added element of fun as well. So I really like dogs, and this like little image thing that somebody posted on Twitter has some really, really fun alt text if you look at it. So Twitter actually has a little button in the corner of the image that you can click, and then you can, if you are someone who has okay eyesight, then you can just read it. So yeah, a tan and black bloodhound wearing a blue collar leaps up at the camera, mouth open, eyes crazed and slightly crossed, and both front feet off the ground. Her tail is out at a wonky angle, and her ears are flapping out at right angles from her head. She is beauty and grace. So for sighted users on Twitter, you can click this little button and it brings up the alt text for the image. But you may also, is it right or left? Because I confuse my right and left as well. So you click right, yeah, on your mouse, click inspect on the image, and then it will bring up DevTools that will show you the exact same alt text. As you can see, it's an attribute of the image, and then you can just read that. And yeah, as I said, more on alt text later because it's one of the most important things when it comes to accessibility on the web. Keyboard control. You might have tried using your tab key to navigate through a website before. It's one of the most, the easiest things that you can do. One thing you have to watch out for is focus states, because sometimes it's not just screen reader users who might tab on a site, but it might be someone who has mobility issues, so can't use a mouse, and we should be providing them the ability to use the website and control the website however they want, just the same as a mouse user would. And more on this later when we do the live demos. And then headings and labels. Again, quite a simple one. When you think about headings, usually a page has one H1 tag, that is the main heading of the whole page. And then everything comes under it nested, so you will have a level 2 heading, and then under a level 2 heading you will have a level 3, and so on. Why is this important? Screen reader users might use headings as a way of navigating, so we call them landmarks, and if they are jumbled up, not in the correct order, not logical, then it might really, really confuse your content for someone who can't see it. So can anybody point out to me what wave is showing us here and what's wrong with it? You go.
Is there no H2 heading? It's just H1 and H3.
Yes, exactly. As you can see, this is the main category of this page, paint, which is an H1. But then right under it, it's got H3s. So that, logically, does make no sense at all. My thinking is that whoever designed this was using the headings as like style elements. So basically just choosing H3 because it looked a certain way, but that's not the intent here. You have to label everything up when you're a developer, and you might check for this again using your DevTools. You have to label everything up, buttons, links, lists, so that it shows their purpose. And then the last one, that is, again, a really easy one to check for, descriptive link text. Now, I mentioned before that some screen reader users might use headings to navigate a site, but then they can also use links to navigate the site. And what happens then is, we are going to demo this as well. The screen reader just goes through all the links on the site or the page and then just reads them all out. So what happens if there are 3 links that just say read more? without context, without seeing what's there, you wouldn't know what read more is. You don't know what you want to read more about. So make sure that your links are describing where you're taking the user so that they know, even without context, or even when it's read out to them, what that link is. And then this is my closing slide, and then we will have a little break. So just remember that this is all about empathy. I think us as QAs, our mission or our job is to put ourselves in other people's shoes, and the users of a website could be anybody. They could have any sort of needs, disadvantages, disabilities. You don't know. So we don't want to exclude anybody. So please be really empathetic to people, because that's just part of your job. And we have a...
Brilliant.
Everyone want to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashley. I don't know if any of you know me. I think I know a few faces in the crowd, but yeah, I'm a digital recruiter at Searchability. We actually sponsor QABC, provide the pizza and drinks that you've got today. So yeah, you might all know of my colleague Gabby Trotter. So she used to attend these events and get involved. She's gone on maternity, so I'm taking a step forward, going to try and get involved in this a lot more. And yeah, just thought it made sense to introduce myself and tell you a bit about me. So have we got the next slide? Oh, is it there? Thank you. Oh, amazing. I think I've just got the one, haven't I? Perfect. So yeah, my name's Ashley. I'm a digital recruiter at Searchability. So I specialise myself in QA and test recruitment across the North West and Yorkshire. I've got my colleagues as well, Jess and Chris. They cover the rest of the UK. So Searchability, just to give you a brief update, we were founded in 2012 and we set out to disrupt the traditional recruitment industry. From then on, we have done nothing but grow. So we have got these sub-brands with us now: Hirecracker, Scalability and Clickstarters, which cover all of the needs that we have for our clients, whether that be graduates hiring and other recruitment needs or large scale of recruitment. So yes, we do sponsor these events and we love to be involved in the tech meetup. So I attend, going to be QABC from now on, but I do attend Ministry of Tests regularly as well. So yeah, I do have some job roles that I'm going to go through that are some potential opportunities. Obviously, I know Ken quite well as well. I work alongside Code Computerlove and I've placed tester here today. So yeah, if anyone has any hiring needs, I'm always contactable, whether that be just about what's on the current market or whether you need any assistance with advice about new opportunities or how to get into QA and test. So I'm going to go through just 3 job roles that we've got at the moment that are within the junior mid-level range. So I've got one at the moment. So this is a junior QA technician. Salary-wise can reach up to about 30k. With this role, they do require at least 6 months experience. However, we do have roles coming in frequently for any beginners that don't require the experience, or there might be elsewhere that you can go to find out different ways to get experience, whether that be, again, attending these meetups and Ministry of Tests. They are good ways to get involved within the industry. Another one I've got is a software tester position based in central Manchester. These are junior mid-level roles with salaries that can range up to 38k. They obviously recruit across 2 offices, so although they have the Manchester office, they also have a Stoke office as well, and can be in the office 1 to 2 days a week. Finally, we've got another role, which is a digital QA position. This one's a little more flexible. It's not in the Manchester city centre. It's in Stoke-on-Trent, but it's remote working with 1 to 2 visits a month. This one again requires at least 1 year's experience, but at the moment I wouldn't have any job opportunities that are ready for people without experience. But again, you want any advice on how to get into the market, then please do contact me. Yeah, and I think that's it from me. So yeah, my name's Ashley. Again, if anyone's got any questions about anything within the industry, I'm happy to have a chat or connect with me on LinkedIn. And yeah, I hope to see more of you all at this event.
So now we're going to show a few automated and manual testing checks that we can make. I've got a couple of example sites to show, some good examples, some bad examples. This, something's probably going to go wrong. It's live demos. If it does, just bear with me. I've got some backup slides if things go really wrong and I can just talk through those. So yeah, let's see how this goes. So yeah, the first thing we're going to look at is automated tools. So here we're kind of talking about browser extensions, and there's two in specifically that we're going to cover. So the first is Axe DevTools. So this is by a company called DQ who manage this. I'd recommend checking out DQ for anything accessibility. The resources, the training they've got, the tools they got are absolutely awesome. So yeah, definitely check them out. Right, so I think it's worth talking about these as well because I think there's a bit of a crossover between development and QA here as well. Like these are tools that I'll use day to day when I'm building, when I'm coding components, and they're also tools that Enikő use as well in the testing department because they're just great ways to kind of easily check our like low-hanging accessibility issues that are quite easy to fix. Axe DevTools is it kind of goes into the DevTools as the name suggests. So yeah, you get, once you've installed it, you'll get the tab. And so one thing is that there's a free version and a pro version. I just use the free version. I find it's absolutely fine for what you need to do day to day. I think it's about 40 quid a month per user for a pro license as well. The only thing that you'll kind of get is like this small, like intelligent guided testing that you can set up. Honestly, I just find it absolutely fine just for checking your current page. So yeah, if we click this and it'll start to run. So it's just running on the current page, not on the whole site or multiple pages. With the pro version, if you're running multiple tests to like compare results, you can save a test and then compare another test against it. So yeah, here we've got the total issues it's found. It's kind of broken them down into critical, serious, moderate, minor. You can toggle best practices on. So best practices are things that we should be fixing. Oh yeah, can do. Yeah, they're things that we should be fixing, but wouldn't actually fail like a Wikag guideline or Wikag audit. So that's handy if you just want to care about compliance and you want to be looking at how many issues would fail audits. So you toggle those back on. Yeah, so here we've got links must have discernible text. So here as well, we've got which guidelines it relates to. Section 508, that is more for like American governments. So yeah, these are which Wikag guidelines that's in breach of. If you just click through a few of these, you kind of see that that'll change. Cool, yeah, so yeah, again, stop on this one. So this has been flagged as a best practice one. So I think if your team has like limited accessibility budget and you only need to be prioritizing critical issues, this is a great way if you're writing tickets up to help developers prioritize this. So best practice ones could be lower priority than ones that are actually going to break Wikag guidelines, for example. But I just find it a really nice tool that can, handle or just show you which guidelines it relates to. It's got best practice. It's also got, so it's also got some handy links as well. So more info will take you off to the DQ site, which has an explanation of what the issue is, why it's important, some examples, and also like how you can go about fixing it as well. So if you're trying to maybe get across to someone not as technical why this is an important issue, this is some great kind of documentation you can send them. It could also help out with ticket writing as well. You can also inspect it, so that will highlight the issue in the code. Again, useful for more information to pass on to developers. If we go back to here, highlight it as well, so you can highlight it on the page. I'm not sure what it's highlighting there, but it's highlighting something. But yeah, it might be more obvious with other ones, but it's just really handy. If you're making a screenshot of it, then yeah, you can jump straight to it like that. Yeah, so that's kind of briefly Axe DevTools. Yeah, I just find it a really nice tool just for quickly getting an overview of what issues you've got on the site. Again, it's really useful for picking off sort of low-hanging issues like colour contrast. You know, the issues are quite fixable, so like high impact but low effort. The second one we're going to have a look at is Wave. So again, this is another browser extension, and again, it's useful for just like high level seeing the issues you've got on the site. Again, yeah, I've got links on here for the download pages for these or install pages for these extensions. So if we look at the same site and we open Wave, so Wave just appears in your kind of extensions toolbar, and yeah, so you can see it's flagging red errors, contrast errors, it's got some alerts, but it's also got features, so you know, if you're using any ARIA, it's flagging that as well. So tend to, definitely make sure that you're flagging and trying to fix these red issues. But also the alerts are important as well. So the alerts are more things that automated tools might not be able to detect if they are an issue. So they need some more manual testing, which we're going to come on to in a little bit, because that's really important. So it's worth checking these alerts out, but the errors and the contrast, definitely get those fixed. One thing we found with Wave as well is that it's quite a nice tool to actually tell clients about as well and demo to them. It's quite low entry in the fact it's just a tool that you activate as a browser extension, and then it's quite visual as well. So if it's trying to get clients to care about the fact they've got errors, they could open this, and if they start to see the red everywhere, then it might make them pay more attention. But also a lot of issues we found with accessibility come from content entry, which sometimes can be on the client. So if they know how to use tools like this, they could be checking their own work that they're entering as well as they go.
Yeah, I use this one quite often, and it's just really good to visually highlight the problem areas. So with my clients, they have got a content managing system, so they can actually add alt text to the different images themselves. So it's just good to run Wave sometimes on those pages, and then just see whether there's missing alt text here and there, and I can just send it over to them and say, look, you need to fix this and this, and sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't.
You mentioned ARIA there. Is it worth explaining what ARIA is, just in case people aren't aware of what it is?
Yeah, so ARIA is kind of a bolt-on for HTML, but it should be used as a very, very last resort. So if there's a HTML element that can do something semantically natively, then use that. But ARIA can be used to communicate extra state to assistive technology like screen readers. So, for example, if you've got a hamburger menu that expands, a hamburger button that expands a menu, you can use ARIA to communicate that has a control that it's opening and closing. But yeah, generally there's a couple of rules around it. So no ARIA is better than bad ARIA. So a lot of times on these kind of errors, you'll notice that, I don't know if they'll have A on here, they don't have any on here, but you'll notice that sometimes you'll get a lot of misconfigured ARIA errors, and sometimes that's developers who with the best intentions have tried to add ARIA to improve accessibility have actually ended up breaking it a lot more by using ARIA. So it's something that is an accessibility bolt-on for HTML, but should be used with real caution. No ARIA is better than bad ARIA.
But before you get too frightened about ARIA, this isn't really the QA's sort of job, if I may say so, because we might be able to check whether it's there, but it's not obviously us building it. It's just a good inclusion.
Do you find you use a combination of both of the tools, or do you stick with one more than the other? Yeah,
both of them. Yeah, these are two that I'd say I use day to day. Yeah.
I tend to use Wave a bit more, just because I'm more of a visual person, but obviously Accept Tools has more information. So previously I mentioned bug reports, and I think for that, actually Accept Tools is a lot more efficient because it gives you a breakdown of the reasons why something is wrong. But
if we kind of click into some of the little icons next to the errors as well, similarly to AxDev Tools, it's got a little bit of what it means, why it matters, how to fix it. We've got like a sort of plain English way of like phrasing that error as well. So again, useful for sending to non-technical people or writing up on tickets. Then we've got the standards and guidelines that error relates to. So again, it's worth checking these. So redundant alternative text. So, it's got some alternative text, so it's not failing, but is that alternative text sufficient? That's something that only a manual check can check. These automated tools can't tell you that. It needs some manual checking. There's a couple of nice features as well that Wave has got. So if you click into the empty link one, it's highlighting it there as that one. Then in the code, you can open the code view and it'll show you the bit of code as well that it relates to. And it's also got a couple of nice built-in features as well. So Enikő kind of screenshotted before the content structure of that site, and that was from Wave as well. So here it's flagging where there's issues here. So we've got an empty heading here, H1 to H4, so it's flagging that there's a content issue there. So that's quite a nice visual way of seeing it, because it can be with like developers styling headings in different ways to look like other heading levels. That's a nice way to just see what levels you're actually using. And it does also have a contrast checker inbuilt as well. So here it's telling me that there's 4 contrast issues. If I click on that, it's white on white, definitely an issue. But yeah, you can then kind of, I don't know why these are all white and white, but you can start dragging these around and it'll start changing here whether it's passing or failing. So that's quite a nice way. And again, that's something the client can do as well, or you can just play around with if it's brand issues, you can see there. And then once you've got some passing ones, get the exact color combination and just say, you can pass it on to the designer or the client and say, is this combination would work better? Can we change the colors to this? Yeah, so they were the 2 automated tools. There is also a couple of other things in terms of automation as well, that might be related to dev and testing. So we'll often write kind of unit tests as front-end developers. So this is testing some of the smallest piece of code. Axe, again, by DQ have like a testing library that you can use that'll run accessibility checks alongside your unit tests. UI, end-to-end tests. Cypress has an Axe extension as well, where you can run accessibility tests on your end-to-end testing. Storybook, I don't know if anyone's used Storybook before, that's got an accessibility plugin as well. So again, if that's something you're sharing with clients, so look at components on an individual basis, get that installed. It's just another great way to check. Axe React as well, so yeah, if you've got a React stack, Axe React will output any accessibility failings as you save into your dev tools. So as you develop, and you can catch these sort of issues early before they get pushed to production or UAT or the client sees them. Again, like fixing these things as early as possible, it's more sustainable and efficient for the budget as well, because it's so much more expensive to fix issues once they get to testing and then once they get to production. If we can catch these things early during the development process, so much more efficient. So manual testing. So this is really, really important. Automated tools aren't going to catch everything. They're not going to tell you about like usability issues, such as the keyboard. So I've got some examples coming up of that. So why should we test with the keyboard? It's really easy to do. Most people who use a keyboard, it's something you got right there. You don't need to install anything new. You don't need to get anything running. You've just got it straight away. If we think about the principles again, so this falls into like the operable principle. So anything that a mouse user can do, keyboard or assistive technologist must also be able to do. Good keyboard usage lends itself quite well to screen reader functionality as well, because a lot of that is sort of keyboard commands, arrows, tabbing. I've got a kind of a linked a little blog here as well about how to test with the tab key as well. So definitely, if you're trying this out yourself, then yeah, take a look at that. Don't know if that's the same link, actually, I'll check that. Yeah, this is some kind of keyboard commands that we'd expect to see. So the tab key, that's navigating through interactive elements, so like stepping through buttons, form fields. Enter or space should action or submit relevant interactive elements, so like buttons, checkboxes, and radio inputs. Sometimes you get people thinking that checkboxes and radios will like enter, but it's the space bar that does that. And arrow keys can be used to navigate between tabbed interfaces, radio and checkbox groups. That's if they've been set up correctly. Jumping ahead a little bit there. So yeah, I'm gonna just show some kind of bad and good examples of some keyboard usage here. So if we jump back to this site again, one thing to remember about Wave as well is when you open and close it, it does actually refresh the page. I've had things before where I've tried to like make some fixes in DevTools to do it, close that, and then just lost them all. So just remember, it does refresh it. I'm going to start tabbing through this page now. Can anyone tell me where I am on the page, tabbing through this? This is a live site.
Aside from the update in the bottom left, no.
So there's absolutely no focus states whatsoever on this. Like the page is going down, but I've got no idea where I am. Like, you know, yeah. And one of the things as well that you'll notice is there's nothing in this automated tool that's telling me I've got no focus states. No one can say anything to do the focus. It's a manual check that we need to be doing. And with keyboard just being so easy to do that with, it's just a really easy way to check. And it's just one of the first things that I'll check if I'm reviewing an existing site or a component, like, have I got any focus states? That's like the easiest thing to do. And again, you know, it'd just be such like a low hanging, easy to fix, but high impact change fix that I can make. So that's the first one.
Yeah, and sorry, I don't know if you're going to mention the order of it.
Yes, I've got one on that as well, yeah. Yep, so Abercrombie, like, this came from a Skillshare that we did a few months back, and we kind of ran a little exercise in that to make it a little bit more interactive. We said to people, put your mouse aside and just go onto a clothing site, try and complete a purchase journey just using your keyboard. And some of these things that I mentioned here got raised during that because I'm not cool enough to shop here. So this is something that somebody else found. I think they've actually slightly improved this since I first looked at this. So, and I'll kind of explain why. So, yeah, I'm going to tab into here. So this is something they've added recently, actually. So the first tab in, I've got a skip to content link there. So that's great because it means that I can skip straight past the navigation, which is common on every single page, and skip straight to the main content, which is great because you don't want to force people to have to tab through your navigation, especially if it's got quite a heavy mega menu on every single page. So skip to content. They have added that recently, they hadn't, which makes my example less good, but still, it's still an example. So yeah, if I now then tab into here, so I've got the mega menu open for men's. So, but I've not, as a keyboard user, specifically said that I wanted to open that menu, but now I have to tab through every single one in there. So if I want to get to women's, yeah, same there. So I've got to go through every single one. So something that I think is a better pattern is to make sure that your top level links, you have to toggle that mega menu open, because then the user's choosing if they want to have a look into there, want to tab through it. Otherwise they can just tab from navigation item to navigation item. So I've kind of got an example here. This is a site that we've kind of recently worked on, and we've re-looked at the navigation for this. So if I tab here, so I'm on the check availability, which has got a mega menu or drop down menu, but you know, I don't have to, I'm not forced to go through each one. I can do that using the space, and then I can tab into that and go through it, but I can still move back. I've got stuff like the escape will close that menu. So yeah, it's just providing this extra kind of level of thought for keyboard users. Don't want to make them tab through every single item in the mega menu.
Regarding keyboard users, to what extent is there a common understanding of how you would then open that mega menu? If you're a keyboard user,
yeah,
that's how you navigate websites. Is there the assumption that those users would know to use the spacebar to then access that mega menu? Yeah,
I mean, I think one of the things that we're kind of going to mention later as well is that, like, obviously we're not daily assistive technology users, but yeah, things like the screen reader users and keyboard users, you know, they're using it every day to do everyday things, and so they have got the knowledge of these shortcuts and which keyboard keys do certain things. Again, just with there's kind of the assumption there with the arrow as well, that you have got some kind of drop down. So yeah, enter or space is going to open that for you, and then there's a visual cue as well with the arrow going up that they can then close that again.
Yeah, there is like a general consensus on what's supposed to be happening when you press this button or when you press that button on your keyboard. So they will be probably using very, very similar patterns.
I assume if you were using a screen reader or something, it would actually tell the user who's visually impaired that this is what the thing that you've got highlighted is a drop-down menu, so pressing spacebar will reveal more child elements.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Let's see if we can do a quick inspect on it. Yeah, so this is kind of what I was talking about with ARIA here. So we've got ARIA expanded false, ARIA controls. So if I toggled that open, ARIA expanded would change to true. ARIA controls is the sub-menu check availability. So that's the element that it is toggling open and closed. Yeah, so then the screen reader can then make that connection between this is a control, what's it controlling, is it open? Yeah. So next example is, just around tabbing order, how as developers we can really affect that. There's a couple of ways we can do that with tab index, but also CSS can affect the tabbing experience as well. So say I was a user and I wanted to tab to Europe. So surely I'd expect to go to the Europe column next, right? Because it's visually in that order. But as soon as I tab through to the next one, I'm all the way over there. And so then, I've then got to go through all these. And this is an example of where they've got some CSS properties that are changing that order around. And with interactive elements, that then becomes really, really confusing and just frankly unusable in some circumstances. Like that might cause users to just leave the site.
So why is that actually happening from like a HTML perspective? Is it like an ordered list type thing and they're just in the wrong order, or so how does it work? Like as soon as you press tab on Vietnam, it goes to the other one?
Yeah, so we've got, so the order here is there, so we've got there to there and then there.
Okay, so
the markup
Middle East is the...
Yeah, so they've used CSS to change that sort of markup order, which they've done it with floats, but you see a lot of this with, although like Flexbox and CSS Grid are amazing, we can now easily swap around the order of elements so easily with that, which sometimes is fine if there's no interactive elements involved, but as you see, when you swap in order and then there's interactive elements, it can get really confusing. So the next one, so this next site game, just a warning that there's some moving content on here that I can't stop, which is, another story, another accessibility issue. Yes, but so on here, we can scroll through here, but again, like I'm into the navigation now. No focus states at all until it gets to coming soon. Oh, that's got one, thank you. When I get to sale, oh, that's got one as well, right? So I can tell where I am there. But the bigger issue on here is, so as a mouse user, we've got some mega menus there, but why can I not use that? Like I've got no idea, because I can't even tell that I'm focused on PlayStation now. I've got no visual cue that there's a drop down there. If I hit enter, if I hit spacebar, that's not doing anything, it's just following the link. So keyboard users cannot access the mega menus on this site. Another example that I've seen as well with this is where they can access it, but it's not being hidden correctly by assistive technology. So for, something to look out for is, so if you've got mega menus on your site, test tabbing through the navigation, because often if a mega menu has just been hidden using opacity, it's still discoverable by assistive technology, so I'd still be able to tab through that. It needs to be either like visibility hidden or display none and then toggled like that, because otherwise you're still going to be able to tab through all the elements if it's just opacity none. So yeah, that's another one to check for as well. Just make sure you can't tab through your mega menu despite not being able to see it. But yeah, this PlayStation one, you just generally can't see anything at all. I guess another one that kind of assistive technology, automated tools won't tell you about as well is that there's no way for me to pause this auto-playing banner. So, users with vestibular issues like motion sickness, they can't stop that movement. The only way to actually change it, again, another accessibility, is by dragging it. Not every user has the mobility to be able to drag. And again, automated tools won't tell you any of this. So it's just, I think it really shows how key manual testing is. I thought I'd show some good examples as well. So .gov, if there's any kind of like form work that you're doing, this is a brilliant example. Like their focus states, are just so clear. So you can tell exactly where you are. Nice, and the contrast is great. they have the GDS design system as well, and they've got a bunch of components on here. If I'm building a new component, or if we've got an existing component on a site that's got accessibility issues, I'll often just start here, amongst some other resources which we've got later on. Yeah, they're just great in terms of accessibility. They put so much like time and money into researching this as well, because government sites have to serve so many people that these things need to be right. So yeah, great starting point for like, if you're wondering how a component or an element should be accessible, then yeah, I'd recommend looking here first.
Asking all the questions here, but I'm thinking of someone that's visually impaired. This might not be an issue to them, but like those annoying cookie banners that kind of, for most websites, they kind of drop down, but I know some of them can kind of pop up, especially if it's like join our mailing list. I'm guessing those are accessible through accessibility because you want to dismiss them because they probably interrupt the flow if you're tabbing through.
Yeah, there's one of the examples that I couldn't find again from the Skillshare that we did was, we had one, I think it was like, it might have been a cookie thing or just a general, like, a mode or like a company shouting about something, they opened it. But keyboard focus wasn't put into there when that popped up. So the user, they were still tabbing through the page in the background, but couldn't get onto that modal. So no way of closing it at all, like couldn't get into it. So yeah, I think if something it does pop up like that, I think it's a good idea to put focus into there so the user can close that straight away. I think the BBC on their site have a cookie thing at the top. And I think when you first go on the page, you'll notice that like the tab focus is inside that cookie thing. So if the user wants to close it, the tabbing in there straight away, close that, and then they can continue on the rest of the site.
Yeah, similar to this one. This one has it at the top as well.
Yeah.
I'm curious how like news websites, because a lot of like news articles you can read the first bit, and as you scroll down it says, oh, you have to join you have to join the Guardian or something to read the rest.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing like since the HTML content for like the actual article probably already exists, then you probably could just bypass that with a screen reader. Probably you just read the entire article without needing to sign up.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I never thought that's a great idea.
I just saw like we should delete the actual element at the bottom as well from Dev Console probably to just read the whole article without signing up.
Yeah, there's I think there's a couple of examples as well where those cookie pop-ups or like a newsletter pop-up I've seen, they've had close buttons on as well. So you could just close it down as well if you want to get rid of it. I think tabbing as well will respect DOM order. So if it's like right at the bottom, then they wouldn't tab into it unless you programmatically told the focus to go into there when it popped up. Then they wouldn't hit that tabbing till right at the bottom. It'd just be visually sticky on the page, I guess.
So would you say the cookie banners should be at the top of the page? Because I think for most places, at least for our website, it's at the bottom. Yeah. So it probably should be at the top if that's the first thing, like disabled user should interact with first.
Yeah. I think the example here is, and the BBC one is, and they're generally two good sites I go to for accessibility.
And also, at least for Western European eyes, our eyes are drawn to the top left of a page.
There's some kind of updated Wikag Guidelines coming out as well at the end of this year, possibly. But so like the sticky cookie banners I think you just mentioned about that sit at the bottom of the page, they can sometimes, if you're tabbing down the page and those cookie banners get in the way of focusable elements, that is going to become a Wikag failure with the 2.2 guidelines. So yeah, I think it's I think it's a bit of an anti-pattern, not the best thing to have like the sticky cookie banner. So yeah, but yeah, just check for it blocking any links because that will become an issue with the 2.2 guidelines. Cool. And where are we next? Right, screen reader. Yeah, so I'd say automated tools I probably use every day. Keyboard testing I'll do quite often. Screen reader testing, it's definitely worth doing. Probably not something I do every single day, but I think it's valuable checking through your sites and components with a screen reader. So why? It covers a lot of the guidelines or the principles. People should be able to perceive and understand content. I've put a few links in here how to use the 3 most popular ones. So NVDA is a free one you can download for Windows. VoiceOver comes on the Mac. And JAWS has the largest market share, but it's also paid. It's quite expensive.
Yeah, screen readers can be a bit intimidating when you first start using them because they've got so many complicated controls, and if you are a sighted user then you might not know what the expectation is. So I definitely suggest not starting with screen readers because that will scare you away immediately. But if you do, just be prepared that it's going to take a long time until you can even come close to how an actual screen reader user who has years and years of experience uses their screen readers. So yeah, just start slowly but surely.
Yeah. So as we kind of mentioned before, a lot of keyboard shortcuts can be set up. So we've got arrow keys, we'll step through the content, so like letters and words, tab between interactive elements. Some screen readers have different reading modes, and they can also be configured by users, so they can read more or less grammar, the reading speed can be changed, and as Enikő said, we've done some like testing and we've watched users with disabilities use a screen reader through Fable, and the speed that they read it at, like I can't even comprehend how they understand the words, but it's just kind of example that the rate that I'm going to step through it now in this example is nowhere near what an actual user with a disability using a screen reader would read it as, but it's still worth testing to make sure that the elements we have accessible names and can be discovered by screen readers. So these are my backup slides if this all goes wrong, but yeah, let's see how this goes.
We will ask you to close your eyes in a bit when we start reading out, well, not us, but the screen reader, what this page has in it. So I suppose one thing to mention is, and it kind of got raised as we were chatting before, like different screen readers will read out things in different ways as well. So it's worth bearing that in mind. And for VoiceOver here, I'm using Safari to demo on because Apple being Apple, VoiceOver works best with Safari. So you might, something might sound great on VoiceOver on Safari, but then VoiceOver with Chrome, it might sound different. So that's just something to bear in mind. So hopefully sound's going to come out of the projector, and yeah, another good thing as well is that I've got one of these printed out for the screen readers as well. They're like cheat sheets with all the commands on. Those links that I had on the slide, as well as like how to use the screen readers, also has links to these as well. So yeah, I've always got this just in case, because yeah, I'm not a screen reader user. So yeah, close your eyes now.
Rapid vertical line sustainable clothing with...
Cool. So handy tip for this is that the control key will pause a screen reader using.
No. Rapid vertical line links menu. Visited link image. Rapid logo. Link women. Link men. Link custom. Link story.
So if we then scroll down to these ones.
Link heading level 5.
Right. Listen now.
Without his streaming Joshua on the local beach as he makes art from washed up wood. Link image, hard. Link image, hard. Link image, hard. Link image, hard.
So a bit of an extreme example, but...
Yeah, you can open your eyes now.
Yeah.
So this is the part which I mentioned in the link text has to be descriptive. What on earth is pod? Where does that take me? What is that? We don't know. There's no context because a screen reader user might just have all the links read out to them like we did now. And half of these are even more. Just don't describe what they are really. The most extreme obviously is all the pods.
Yeah.
Just then, we use cycling through the different elements. Okay, so the user would be moving through them at
link image.
and their image.
Yeah.
So where are all these values coming from? Are these all like the ARIA label stuff?
These are just the names that these links have. These are the accessible names that they have. So that could be set by button text, link text. It could be set by like an ARIA label, ARIA described by, or if it's just an image inside of a link that's just got alt text, that can be the accessible name for a link as well.
Yeah, so there's clearly a hierarchy, something takes precedence over like an ARIA label by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
So, do you know what that hierarchy is?
There's something you can...
Is alt text the highest one? Or?
Use it's called the accessibility tree. I'll briefly show that shortly, but yeah, that's a way that you can see. It's often a good way that you wouldn't even need to open a screen reader in some cases. You can just see the accessible name that an element's getting. So yeah, I'll try and demo that in a second.
How does a user like if it gets to men's, how does the user access men's when you've heard it?
So I suppose you just hit enter, and then that's when they get shown where it is.
You are currently on a link.
It tells me you're on a link.
Press control option.
Control option space, yeah. Then that follows it, yeah. So yeah, this is something called the voice over rotor. So this is a way that screen reader users can configure this themselves to navigate through elements, different elements quicker. So they can navigate through links, they can navigate through headings and landmarks. So these are all the headings on the page.
I wanted to mention something with the previous one. Can you go back for me?
Links menu.
So, what is at the top there? What does it say at the top?
Links.
No, under links. What's the first one?
The logo.
And what does a logo do on a website when you click it?
Takes you to the home page.
So, for a screen reader user, is it actually useful that it says Rapa Nui logo instead of just saying home? No.
So where does that Rapa Nui logo come from, like the actual string? Because that must be somewhere in the HTML to actually say that.
Yeah, I'd imagine that'll be.
Is that the old text?
Yeah, we'll check that in a second as an example.
That's a hard one to spot as well, isn't it? Because there's nothing wrong with that label, in my opinion.
No, and I think things like that as well might just be assumed meaning as well. So if the first link on a page for me was image link logo, I'd just assume, right, that's the logo at the top. And you know, some of the experiences we have on a web are just kind of assumed, and the patterns, aren't they? So I just assume that's going to take me back to the home.
Also, as well, the thing is, a logo is designed to be looked at, and if you're not a sighted user, then that function doesn't exist anymore. So it's a button now.
Yeah, the purpose.
So calling it a logo, yeah, is misleading.
That was what I was hinting at. I actually read this in a tweet. I think that a lot of sites have the logo as the home button, basically, and they don't have an actual home button. So then to say, oh, this is a Rapa Nui logo, that's not useful for someone who can't find the home button. So yeah.
But it's useful for me if I'm automating a test and I want to check for where the logo is.
Sorry, say that again.
Like, my point is that Chris is right, it's a button now for a user that's visually impaired, but for me who needs to find the logo and I just want to inspect the element, I can find the logo. I mean, I can see the logo, obviously, but...
Yeah, why would you want to find the logo?
Well, I don't know, for automation purposes, for example.
Well, yeah, but because it's an image, you can obviously configure it so that you can find the logo, but just calling it home as a button won't deter from that, I don't think.
Yeah, my point is that it's labelled, the label is correct, but I get the point that it should say, in this context, it should say home as well.
The label is correct, but the only people who are probably going to see the label are people trying to find it through automated testing, or people who actually are trying to find their way home because they're using a screen reader. So probably it's more useful to people using a screen reader, because people who can see that it's a logo probably don't care what you label it.
Yeah.
I think the point is it's not that easy to think about all the things when you actually do it, as you might think at first.
Yeah, I think that is a very good point. That's why it's really, really important to sort of ask your users or read about it so that you actually know. I didn't know anything about, the logo should really say home until I actually read about the experience that disabled users had with it. So, yeah.
It's an assumption we make, isn't it, as people who can see.
Yeah, and you always have to check your assumptions. Google is your friend. Yeah, if you're not sure how someone who is struggling is actually doing something, then just read up on it, because there probably is somewhere on the web that explains it to you.
Yeah.
So when you open a screen reader, did it automatically open the links straight away?
That list, no, that was a command
Right,
to open the voice over rotor.
I was going to say, how would you get off this to fill in a form? Because I'm guessing it's probably showing all the A tags first, but if you want to kind of go into the I don't know, input fields, then you would somehow need to click
Visited
this.
link image.
Yeah.
Rapid look go. You are currently on a link. To click this link, press Control, Option, Space.
So then yeah, I can just kind of
First name,
tab
edit text
through.
with autofill menu, name.
Right.
Safari is not responding.
Thank you.
I told you something was going to go wrong.
So how did you get that links thing to pop up again?
It's just a shortcut. So it's Control Option U, and this is the VoiceOver rotor. So now I can step through this. So I've got all links, I've got all headings. So again, this is why it's important to have a correct heading structure. Users, there's a link I've linked to later, which is like a survey of assistive technology screen reader users, and one of the questions they asked was how do they navigate with it, and one of the answers that came out top was by headings. So accessible content structure is really important.
Heading level, link, heading level 4.
Skip through, so it must be wrapped in
You are
an image.
currently on a link. To click this link, headings menu, form controls menu.
Form controls, you can skip through those as well.
Landmarks menu.
So landmarks, it's like your main, your navigation, footer, for example, they can be skipped through.
Windows spots menu, links menu.
Yeah, so it's just wanted to kind of give that example of how a screen reader might be navigating it, why it's important.
So are you cycling for all these menus? So you're cycling for all these kind of menus by using that same command, like that control?
Control Option, you opened it, and then it's arrow keys to
So it's a cycle between all those kind of types of menus.
Yeah. It'll be different commands and different interface for like NVDA, but as a Mac user, I just use VoiceOver most of the time to test. So,
but as we said, this is like a really, really advanced thing that has its own. That has its own rules. So having a cheat sheet like this one, or just Googling a certain type of screen reader that will tell you what sort of intricate combinations you have to use to get the links up, for instance. So it does take quite a bit of learning to know all these by heart.
You said you'd seen people actually, visually impaired people actually using this. I imagine they speed through it really quickly once they've got the hang of it.
So yeah, this is the accessibility tree viewer in Chrome. So yeah, here, this is kind of like the DOM for accessibility. So this is how these elements would be interpreted to assistive technology. So yeah, clicking on the image here, we can see over there, here's what the accessible name could be. Nothing else is specified, so it's taking the alt text, which is the logo, which is what we saw in VoiceOver. So that's where it's getting those from.
So could it say home and logo, or is it better to relabel it to Raccoony Home?
I think, honestly, I think that'd be something if it was an important issue to test with your users.
If you just said logo, I would be much more like in line with what you're saying. But to me, that looks like the logo. I can see it's labelled logo.
Yeah.
So I understand the problem that you're saying that with the screen reader it says logo, and that is not useful to someone who is visually impaired. But so what's the solution? Can you label them two different labels for the two different ways of looking?
You can add alt text that will maybe.
So the alt text is logo.
Yeah, that's the alt. The logo is the alt text.
There's no limit to how much alt text you can put in, so it can say logo, link to home.
If you set ARIA label, though, for example, it'd overwrite the alt text, so it'd read the ARIA label instead. But yeah, the accessibility tree, as you can see, so if you're getting a bug reported that something isn't being read out correctly, rather than if you didn't want to open a screen reader or for example, you could jump into the accessibility tree, go to the element and immediately see, oh, there's nothing on there that's got an accessible name, so that's why it won't be getting read out correctly. So, it's just a great way to, you can see kind of like states on there, so is it focusable, is it focused? It's just a really nice way of inspecting accessibility properties. I just had a couple of screenshots here in case everything went really wrong.
You did.
Ish. So yeah, we've got just the headings and then the links as well.
Cool. Just a quick question on that before we move on. You mentioned that the screen readers behave differently, and maybe people are using different browsers and they're working differently with those browsers as well. I've been having some issues with that lately, in that certain things maybe in my product can be read by a particular screen reader, then another one is reading it in a different way, or it's just not kind of correct, or it misses it altogether. would you kind of keep going and keep trying to work on it until all the screen readers can work on it, or at least all the biggest ones, or I guess is it sufficient that one work over another, or why would that be?
Yeah, there's a tough one. I think it just takes so long to get everything, some things working on absolutely everything perfectly. I think part of using like screen readers, I think you're gonna have to accept that there might be some instances where things aren't read quite right or differently for some elements. The survey later is a great place to start in terms of that. It's kind of got how many users are using it on certain browsers and certain assistive technology. So although it's not specific to your site, it's a starting point to see, maybe compare it against your analytics. So what are my top users? What browsers are they using? So are they likely to be using like Chrome? And then if so, based on that survey, what was the most popular screen reader for Chrome? And then maybe concentrate on that one. But again, nothing will substitute for actually testing with users with disabilities. And Fable, for example, you can run tests where there might be 5 different users testing it, and they might be using, you can specify different screen readers, different browsers.
Yeah, we'll get into that a bit later.
Yeah.
Andy?
Do you get any clue in anything like user agent strings, what screen readers people are using, or do we get no clue set back to the size at all?
No, it'd be a privacy issue. You could, if you can detect that kind of stuff, then you could start to, work out if people have disabilities, what disabilities they might have. So yeah, there's no sort of tracking you can do around that.
About automated tools. We have shown you a couple of things when it comes to automated tools, but all throughout those demos we have told you that doesn't substitute manual testing. Manual testing is just as important because there are certain things that only humans can really catch and understand. And one of the best examples would be alt text. So here you can see I assume a biologist who posted this on Twitter. She was trying to put a PowerPoint together. Now this is quite an old example. This is from 2018. So AI might have gotten better a bit. So it might not mark a bat up as a squirrel anymore. But there are other things that AI might not catch. When you think about memes, what about irony? How will AI detect humour? Or how will AI detect beauty? Or how will AI detect context? Like where's the emphasis? What do we want to actually talk about when we're putting that image in there for sighted users? Jim? This is your example here. Oh
yeah, so this is just one I saw it was on a parkrun Facebook page. Yeah, obviously images with text inside, not great. And yeah, obviously when this has been uploaded, someone hasn't put it in, so Facebook's just tried to guess it. Yeah, what you can kind of see and what Facebook's come up with, it may be an image of one person. Well, it's not. Well, I suppose there is one person, but so yeah, and at parkrun you can have get blind runners. So if that user is then stepping through Facebook trying to find out important information and they get alt text like that for something that might be important, how are they supposed to find out any of that information? It's going to be completely lost on them. So yeah, just a really good example of like AI. It's totally failed there. It needs manual checking. It needs manual attention.
Yeah, and I come from a sort of arts background. I did art in uni, and I found a really good article on the Vision and Art Project where they talk about making artworks accessible. And as I mentioned, beauty or the significance of an image can't really be put across by AI yet. So Facebook AI described this painting by Vermeer, young woman with a water pitcher, as maybe an illustration of a person and indoor. Now, the human alt text is quite lengthy, which isn't advised. But I think in the case of artworks, it can be really good because it's almost like literature. It takes you where you need to be when you're looking at a piece of art. So in this case, I think it's forgivable that they have put a complete paragraph in there, so that someone who will never have the joy of looking at this beautiful painting might still experience it in one way or another. And
just wanted to flag one thing. Sorry. Just from this slide here, there's a developer here that is. Admittedly set out to do this, but he built a site that was totally inaccessible, but still scored 100 on Lighthouse's accessibility checker. If you check out the article and see the finished site, you can't see anything on the page, but you check it with Lighthouse, it gets 100. It's just a good example.
Which is really good.
It's just a good example of how these automated tools, you need to be manually testing as well.
Yeah. But none of what we do as able-bodied sighted users will replace what actual users with disabilities can do. Their lived experiences trump everything. So if you have the budget and the opportunity, then we highly recommend using a service like Fable that we mentioned before. So they actually employ disabled people who might use all sorts of different assistive technologies on a day-to-day basis, so they have great experience, they know what they're doing, and they will give you feedback on how your website is performing from a human point of view, because we can't really overlook that. That's what this is all for. It's not just ticking boxes.
Yeah, so kind of leading on to that as well. So we have spoken in this a lot about the guidelines, and they're a great place to start. They're a good place to check things against when you're testing, when you're first building, but accessibility is so much more than checklists and ticking boxes. We're not here to put users into specific groups. There are things in the guidelines that can't really convey someone's lived experience. There's nothing, for example, about emotion in the guidelines. Someone might be struggling with mental health. I think it's about really considering your users' needs rather than just everything against the guidelines. And creating an accessible and inclusive culture as well should trump just trying to be compliant with everything. As I say, it's important, but I think it needs to start with culture. So if you are championing accessibility in your organisation, just keep doing that, keep making people realise it's important. And if you can create that, then those kind of learnings are going to turn into habits, and then you're going to be kind of compliant by default almost, if you just keep working at it. Although testing, it is a lot of checking stuff against boxes, and the guidelines lend themselves well to that, but please definitely just consider actual user needs and human experiences. Be human-centred rather than just guidelines and checking everything against that.
Yeah. And a really good way of doing that yourself is to try and do a course. There is a foundation course that Wikag has put in place that is free, and it shows actual real-life users who use assistive technologies and sort of raises awareness about their everyday issues and problems, and it just sort of makes you a bit more aware. And it's quite simple actually. The course itself is a really good step-by-step guide that just gives you the basics that you might need, and it's got some really, really good practical tools that we have already kind of talked about and covered, but there's plenty more that just releases you into the wild and helps you.
It's got people using screen readers on more elegantly than I did. There's little things like exercises where talking about how a user might view it if they have tunnel vision, and it gets you to look through a little tube at your content, and how it's spaced out and making sure that you don't have to scroll in multiple directions. It's a non-technical one as well. There's no coding involved, but it's just a great fundamentals course. Learn a bit more about accessibility, a bit of awareness of the different technologies people use. There's a test and accessibility one by Marcy Sutton. There is a cost involved with that, but if you've got a training budget, it's a great use for it. That goes through how to test accessibility, things to look out for. It's got good and bad examples, and there is some coding involved in that, but you can also just watch as she kind of like codes along as well. And then accessibility testing by Rachel DiTullio. This is her watching her actually do some accessibility testing on a site, which is really valuable to see how other people do it.
Yep.
It's kind of just like a message that I wanted to end on, and especially if you're trying to champion accessibility in your company, it needs all of us. It can't just be down to developers, can't just be down to designers, can't just be down to testers. Everybody needs to care about accessibility and buy into it for it to be really successful. So this is kind of a little bit of message about I was talking about the culture. It needs everybody.
Yeah. We as testers can be the whistleblowers, but in an ideal world, it shouldn't come to just us, and it shouldn't come down to that stage without taking accessibility into consideration. Yeah.
And then, finally, we've just got some useful resources, just ones I put together. So Fable, got the Axe DevTools and Wave again there, documentation resources and guidelines, colour contrast checker by Alex, who worked here, that Enikő showed before. Ably is, this is by Gareth Ford Williams. He's part of this company, and he worked with the accessibility for the BBC for 20 years, the accessibility team there, and he's trying to get more richer audience accessibility data and improved insights. So that's worth checking out. Screen reader survey, that's the one that isn't specifically for your site, but it's a good starting point when you're thinking about which screen readers to support, which assistive technology to support, what browsers they might be using. So definitely check that out, and then check that against your analytics. We've got a strong case for accessibility if you need to make that. That's a great article on Smashing Magazine. And a shameless plug as well, we wrote a blog article here about some accessibility testing tools. A lot of those we touched upon here, but if you want reference, then links on there as well, then check that out.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Hope you enjoyed it. And obviously, if you've got any questions, then feel free to ask now, and we can have a little conversation going.
Or just grab us afterwards.
Or if you just want drinks, then drink up. Thank you.
Excellent.
Really well done. Thank you very much.
Great. What we want to do, we want to try and get more people involved. So get in touch with us. We want people to come up. We want people to, speak. We want people to do demos. We want hands-on sessions. We're offering it out to the community to come along, get involved with this. Even if you just want to practice, talking in presentations, give us a shout, come up, and, we'll always get time for everyone. And that's about it from us. We've got social media links, so we're on Facebook. Chris, what are we on? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, that it? All right. And we've got a YouTube channel, so this has been recorded. It'll be put up hopefully this year. Take care going on. Cheers, guys. Thank you.